You are listening to 9 Hours Till 5, written by Margaret, Adetimehin, and narrated by Madison. Chapter 1. I got my first job out of boredom in the month of love. Even if I had tried to ignore my boredom that February, the itch at the back of my neck kept reminding me how bored I was. It was during my second year in the university, and the Academic Staff Union of Universities ASUU was on strike. I thought it was going to be the usual 2-week scare strike, but after 4 weeks I gave up on the union and traveled back home. 2 weeks later I was bored with rereading underdeveloped school materials, and then out of the blue a friend from school called me on the phone. He was in my vicinity for a training and he wanted to know if I was interested in stopping by. I jumped at the offer to leave the house. Anything different from the monotonous life I was living was welcome. On arriving at the place, I docilely sat in a classroom with my friend and about 18 more people. It was a field research work. They would be given phones that were equipped with GPS and internet, and they were to confirm locations reported by a previous research. It was an urgent matter. In no time, phones were being distributed with code names, forms were being filled, and I was propelled to sign up alongside my friend. It will be fun, I thought to myself. New locations, all expense paid, but we would be making use of public transportation. We were divided into groups of 4, each with 1 supervisor. My team, however, became a compound team because we were 3 teams that had to work around similar areas. We soon became a family and a bond was formed. I was having the time of my life and did not notice that 2 months had passed since I left school. Experiencing completely different places within the same state was a high that I was not ready to come down from. You really do not have to go far to experience diversity in your state of residence. Riverine areas, borders, forgotten places, hidden places, they are just a shuttle away from you. I made friends fast and lost them even faster during that job. I also started feeling resentment towards the management and contract staff. The first issue occurred when my compound team arrived at a location split to our different areas of concentration, and by the time we got back together, a team recounted how they were almost set ablaze in their assigned neighborhood. What happened was that they had no means of identification, and the indigenes thought they were swindlers just like the ones before them who had collected money from the community to plan a mass for them but were never heard from again. When we arrived at the headquarters, we reported this issue to the management, and the best they could do was to turn their face to the other side and say, "You all are temporary, and creating IDs would be a waste of resources." Okay. However, what we do for you is not a waste of resources, is it? Just try to avoid people and get the job done, the superiors added. How do you expect that to happen when you want us to ask direct questions? I do not know why it was called a research when they were expecting us to come up with imaginary data. I sincerely hope things have changed with research in the country because this was one of the major research companies in West Africa, and if such a thing could happen there, one can only imagine what goes on in smaller research firms. A plethora of incidents happened after this. Researchers, scared for their own safety and annoyed at the company's negligent attitude towards their welfare, started reporting as they deemed fit. Next was the cut in pay for no reasonable reason. Now I do not know if this was from the mother company, or from that particular department of the company. The company was expanding and hiring new recruits. They needed experienced field workers to help oversee them, and I was recommended by virtually all and sundry. Nevertheless, when I thought I would be told that I had gotten a position as a supervisor, the conversation went like this. "So we do not think you will make it to being a supervisor." Why? You are a lady and there are 4 guys in that team. We do not think you can manage them. That was a shock to my system, as I had never been denied anything based on my gender prior to that time, and I was almost 18. I was disappointed, and did not know whether it was in myself or it was in the fact that the superiors did not consider me capable of actually managing guys. Does one need muscles to manage and lead people? The itch at the back of my neck started again sometime in July during a long vacation. The feeling of uselessness was plaguing me again. The ASUU strike had ended abruptly and around the time when things started getting complicated with the research company, so I was happy to resume my lazy student life. The only problem was that I was not making money and I had needs. Topping the list was a laptop for projects and maybe loading up recent movies and some songs, since I was starting to run out of memory space on my phone. I just needed a laptop. I had friends in church whom I looked up to when it came to hustling. Jonathan in particular was the kingpin of the hustling gang. It was not really a gang, but my wild imagination liked creating things. He was not in school at that point in time, but I believed he could help me, especially since he mostly engaged in short-term jobs. I sent him a message on WhatsApp to check his availability in church the next Sunday. That's one other thing about Jonathan, he came and went as he pleased. WhatsApp message from Jonathan. I don't think so. What is happening? As usual, something must be happening for Jonathan to come to church, and happening usually meant special dance or drama rehearsal. I give it to him, he was an exceptional dancer. WhatsApp conversation with Jonathan. I need to talk to you face to face about something. About what? When we see. I would be talking about it if it were something I want to chat about now. This time around, compared to his prompt response to the previous messages, he took his sweet time to respond. 20 minutes later, I was in the kitchen helping my mother with dinner when my phone vibrated in my back pocket. It was as if the network had been held since the last time I sent a message, and it decided to show itself now that I needed to show my usefulness in the kitchen. If you were me, no matter how much you had anticipated that call or message, at that point in time you would not check your phone. I was a grown woman, yes, nevertheless African mothers will not have you flipping your phone while you are in the kitchen with them. You could bring a novel into the kitchen to read, but a phone? If you still cannot imagine the life speech you are going to get, ask any individual who brought out their phone while carrying out an activity with their African parent. I could have done it and gotten away with it, but I had exhausted the "my daughter has returned" grace. This is the special guest treatment you are given when you have just returned from school. Under the cover of that grace, nothing you do is wrong, but I had used it up. My phone kept vibrating and I thought it might burn a hole through my pocket. 5 minutes later, I suddenly developed an urgent need to use the toilet. Hurrying to the toilet to read and reply to my messages, I quickly scanned until I found his name. WhatsApp message from Jonathan. Okay, but I will come in late. Awesome. Just make your way to church, I thought to myself. Yes, I know. I know. I was supposed to preach to him about coming to church early and all that, but he is not the main character of this story, so do not judge me when I only tell you things that involve just the two of us and how they affected my own life. I flushed, and that was the end of my toilet episode. On Sunday, John came to church. He came late, sauntering in when the offering bag was being passed around. I shook my head in awe, wondering why someone would come for service so late. Then I remembered that I really needed his help, and harboring indignation against him was not going to help. Can I go as far as worshipping in a shrine? I wondered. Within 30 minutes we said the grace, and I joined some friends to welcome the new members. While strolling towards a small gathering of brothers, I greeted familiar faces. I stopped in front of the gathering, and as usual, Brother John was the center of attraction. I signaled to him that I was ready to go home, and he gave the sign of 5 minutes. I then went ahead to pack my bag. As he was saying goodbyes, I met him at the entrance. What's up, Funmi? He asked in his warm voice. It has been a while. So says the person I was begging to attend today's service the other day, I responded. We matched our paces and started walking out of the church. He smiled fondly and continued, I really do not have much time. But you just came in moments ago, I appealed. I drove my cousins to church and they will soon be waiting at the parking lot. So what is it you want to tell me? And by the way, you are looking good. Flattery, flattery. Someone is missing the point of this conversation and it is not me. I am on a long holiday. Oh nice. I'll get to see more of you. He drew closer to pinch my elbow, but after 2 failed attempts and realizing where we were, he stopped. Like you do come to church regularly, yeah? You know you are the one who will bring me back to Christ. You even have a better chance of succeeding than my mom. His face was straight with conviction. If I respond with what I have in mind, this flirtatious banter will continue and John will forget that he has cousins waiting for him. I decided to go for the kill. John, I want to be a hustler like you. He tried to respond, but I would not be interrupted. I need to buy a laptop and my dad keeps promising to get me one since year 1. I also need money for other things and I have to work it all out by myself. By the time I gave him the chance to respond, all he could say was, you are not built for that life. You are a good girl and being good is something I really wish I could learn again, but life happens. You are lucky you are a girl, your parents will take care of you. Once you start hustling, you may find it hard to stop. I'll advise you to focus on school, get a good job and marry me. I rolled my eyes at that and he responded by adding, I will ensure that you give birth to all our kids in the USA. No child of mine will grow up here. John was from a middle-class family, but he lived like he had no one. He was 2 years older than me, which made him 20 years old, yet he always talked as though he had seen everything there was to life. Now that was what I wanted. That was hustling for me. Been there, done that. Next? Yes, and making the money too. Be serious, I reprimanded him. Seriously, Funmi, do not stress. You are blessed. Whatever, Pastor John. You want me to have and train your kids in the USA, yet you will remain in Nigeria. Who thinks like that? I do not think I want that kind of life. Oh no, I have deviated. I want the best for my wife and kids, but I do not like the weather. So I will not have anyone to cuddle? We will sort that out when it is time, he laughed, and then he checked his watch. Ignoring our time-bound meeting, I argued my point. But I worked last ASUU strike. I went to places that I naturally would never have been to. If I could do that, if you show me the way, I can do this. I honestly do not know why I never bought a laptop during the strike the previous year. The money I earned was much, but it was never enough. It was as though I did money ritual. I cannot remember what I spent that money on, but it kept on coming in. For some time John appeared deep in thought. Finally he gave me the best answer he could come up with. You can start with ushering jobs. I do that once in a while. I need something more. A phone was ringing. It was his. He pulled it out of his pocket to check the caller ID. I need to go now. Okay, I responded, secretly wishing that he could stay. See you next Sunday? Only if we can see before then. Later today? I can come to your place. We are not done with this discussion, I pressed. We will chat, he smiled and swaggered away. Other girls were tripping all over him, but I was much too determined to not be one of them. I preferred hearing stories of how they conquered him and heed them from his lips. His nonchalant attitude during our discussion had damaged my morale, but I decided not to let him get to me. Later that afternoon I called and pleaded with him until we fixed another meeting. Somehow I ended up agreeing to meet with him at a local bar and restaurant that was about 14 minutes drive from my house but 3 minutes walk from his. Present day. Larry and I had met once in the past, when I was still struggling and trying to put my works out in public. He couldn't be of help then because, like me, he was a newbie. He stared at the book that looked more like a pamphlet in something akin to awe and humor. By the time he looked up, the studio extras had already fixed our mics and given us the sign that we were to go live in 30 seconds. Pushing back my headphone from one ear, I motioned for him to do the same, then I moved my mouth away from the mic to avoid speaking into it. Don't forget to ask about my book launch date though, I whispered. My first book would be launched in 2 weeks' time, and I was using every opportunity to push it into the limelight. The studio extras gave a 10 seconds warning. Larry looked at the timer on the playout software, then slid buttons on the radio audio console like the professional that he was, and the show began.